Disney bullies theaters, forcing Mufasa and more theaters than Sonic 3, even as Hedgehog earns far more. Now, Travis asked this in the very beginning, isn't this the theater's problem and not Disney's problem? Sure, right? If the mafia comes over to me and says, hey, if you're selling this thing on our turf, I'm going to break your leg. Obviously, that's my problem. You're absolutely right. My problem is, well, if I sell the thing, I'm going to get my legs broken. That's not the mafia's problem. That's my problem, right? Of course it's my problem. Sarcasm, okay? So let's read this. If you guys like what I do here, we read articles, have conversations. If you like it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you'd like to go above and beyond that, become a member as little as $5. Disney bullies theaters, forcing Mufasa and other more theaters than Sonic 3, even though the Hedgehog is earning more money. As the holiday season unfolds, the cinematic landscape reveals a familiar pattern. Disney flexing its box office muscles by dominating theater allocation. However, this year brings an unusual twist, as Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has emerged as the unexpected box office leader for the media analysts, but not for nor me, despite being hindered by Disney's theater allocation tactics. Okay, when you have, again, this is going back 20 years now. Okay, over 20 years, like 22 years. Okay, when I used to work in the movie theater industry, okay, when I worked in the theater, Disney would say, if you want our movies in your box office, then you have to have it into the theater for so long, and you have to have it in so many theaters. And on top of that, if they brought their blockbuster movie in, you would also have to take their smaller films, and they would take over the majority of the theaters. So if you had a movie theater that had like a megaplex that had like 20 theaters, Disney films could be taking over half of that, okay? Half of that. And on top of that, they have to be in the biggest theaters, or they have to be in certain theaters. And they do this on purpose to stop the competitors from coming in, because even if they come into the theater, they're in the smaller theaters, so they would make smaller amounts of money per theater, because obviously a movie's a movie. So if it's a 2-hour runtime, that theater for 100 seats can only be filled a couple times a day, so you can't have multiple theaters with it, right? In that same plaza. So Disney approaches to holiday release as long as relied on scrutiny of the widest possible theater's footprint. The strategy ensures that the films are accessible to the broadest audience, squeezing out competitors. Historically, the tactics has been highly effective, right? This is way back when, in the early 2000s, this is how it was, okay? In 1999, Toy Story 2 dominated Thanksgiving weekend in record-breaking release in 3,236 theaters, setting a precedent of Disney's future holiday campaign. More recently, Moana 2 debuted in a staggering 4,200 theaters during Thanksgiving of 2024, grossing $221 million in 5 days, contributing to the highest-grossing Thanksgiving weekend on record. If you put it out in the most places, you're going to get the biggest, hopefully, get the biggest box office, because you're covering the biggest, broadest area, and you're not letting anyone else in. You're knocking out the competition. The difference between like a movie theater and like a game, both games releasing at the same time, right? If like a Grand Theft Auto released the same time as another game, you could still download that game. They're not stopping you from downloading that game, right? Your time is your time. But in the theater, that space is for that movie. So it's only that thing, and only that can be shown. And if that's taking up both big theaters and a megaplex, and it's running 4 times in each theater, well, no one else can come in the next weekend, because in their contract, Disney says you have to have our theater in theaters for, back in the day, it was like 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it was. And the longer it stayed in the theaters, the more money the movie theater would make, but they would also make less money because less people would go to see it as the weeks progress, right? This is why 90% of the money is made in the first 2 weeks, okay? So it says Disney controlled over theater allocation not only boosts revenue, but also limits the availability of screens for competing films, particularly during lucrative holiday season. Despite Disney's dominance, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has emerged or managed to outpace the competition at the box office, ranking in more than $60 million in the opening weekends, and scrutiny in the top spot, North America, yet its successful is overshadowed by significant limitations in ability to expand its theater count. Right, so all this means is that less people are seeing the Disney movie. So there's less people per theater watching the Disney movies, and movie theaters can't put more Sonic movies in because Disney's taking up the spot. So there's dead space in the theaters, right? So the movie theater can't even put the popular movies, more theaters in their theater, because they're under contract with Disney, and Disney's like, nope, you got to keep it there, right? So Disney's still making money off of but they're less per square foot of the theater, where Sonic is packed houses, and this is why they're beating in their opening weekend and whatnot to other films. Currently showing in 3,769 locations, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 faces a bottleneck cause of a contractual obligation many theaters have with Disney for Mufasa, the Lion King. While Sonic 3 has provided far more revenue per theater, the total count of screens added for Sonic 3 from the first week is to second with the staggering 8. Okay, that's it. from the first week to the second week, they only raised how many theaters opened up to 8 more theaters across the entire world. Yes, 8 additional screens in the entire nation. Disney's agreements often stipulate extends runs in high number of theaters, leaving little room for other blockbusters to increase their reach, despite being the second highest earner this season. Mufasa continues to occupy 4,100 locations, effectively stifling Sonic's ability to capitalize on its box office momentum. The scenario highlights the broader implications of Disney's theater saturation strategy. While the tactics maximize Disney's box office return, it also reshapes the competitive dynamic of the holiday season. Films like Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which might otherwise expand their footprint to meet audience demand, are constrained by the lack of available screens. Theaters, to face the dilemma, Disney films often come with guarantees of high audience turnout, making them safer bet for exhibitors. Right. So obviously, a couple years ago, when Disney came out with a movie, right? Like, think about it as a theater. Even though the Star Wars movies weren't as beloved, okay, they still broke $1 billion each one, okay? And imagine being a theater owner or a corporation of a theater, and you didn't run any of the Star Wars, right? You would miss out on all that money from the snack bar that people came into and all the other things that they do because you didn't want to put, right? When you are the majority of, when you're the monopoly, when you're the bigger fish in the pond where you can eat the other guppies in the water, you set the price, you set the standard, you set what it is. So Disney is pushing their weight around. Even though their movies are not as popular now, they still have, well, they had, I don't know what they have now, I'd have to look it up. They had the most amount of movies out. And because they're the leader, they set the terms. And everyone else just falls in line because if you want to make money in your theater business, you have to have Disney films in your theater. Okay. However, the resilience of Disney can lead to the reduced diversity in movie offerings, limiting choices for moviegoers and opportunities for competing studios. The recent past is starting to have some AMC and Regal reconsider their House of Mouse relationship. I told you what I would do if I owned a theater. It would be a small theater, and I would do limited run. So if a new movie came out, it would be in that theater, in all the theaters. If I had a 4-theater movie theater, I wouldn't do a multiplex, right? I would only do a certain amount of theaters, like 4, maybe 6. It would be really small, 4, okay? And let's say Mufasa came out the opening weekend. Mufasa would be in all the theaters. That's it. People come to the theater. Then the following week, if the next movie comes out, then you're putting the next brand new movie out. You don't keep it in the long runs. That's what I would do in a small theater, right? Try to make it a little different than keeping a movie in the theaters for 13 weeks in my theater where it's knocking out the other movies that people might be interested in, okay? As Sonic the Hedgehog 3 continues to thrive against the odds, it succeeds, raises questions about the sustainability of Disney's dominance. Can other studios find ways to break through Disney's theater stronghold, or will the mouse continue to dictate the rules of the game during peak season? The strange case of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 at the box office leader constrained by theater availability underscores the evolving challenges of the market dominated by a single powerhouse. It remains to be seen whether or not remarks begins to shift in the holiday box office dynamics or fleeting anomaly in Disney's region. So, in my opinion, what would happen here, if the theaters wanted to, in the future, let's say this holiday season in 2025, all of a sudden the next movie comes out that Disney's putting out. The theaters would have to say, yeah, if you're coming out in November, then you're in the main theater for 2 weeks and that's it. Then we're pushing you out or we're moving you to a smaller theater. They can't sign these long-term deals where they have the biggest theater in these megaplexes for the longest period of time. They have to start shifting them over to either the smallest theater or get it out of the theater completely. Now, this would be a big move from the theaters in my perspective because obviously they want to make money, and if it's a gamble, right? It's like, what movie is going to do good? What movie is going to do bad? You don't know, right? Sonic, they might have thought was going to do worse. So this is why they didn't want to put it in their theater, but now it's making a lot of money, and now they want the buzz. They're like, yeah, we'll put it in our big theater because there's interest. There's got to be different ways that the movie theater has to try to circumvent what Disney's trying to do, okay? By just bullying people, by saying that we have this whole main stage and you're shit out of luck, okay? If there's 20 theaters and they have 10 of the theaters, not 10 with just the one movie, but 10 theaters of the 20 theaters of just 3 different Disney, right? There's a shit ton of Disney movies out. Not all the movies that you think of, the big, like Moana, there's other smaller films made by Disney that are in the smaller theaters. And then there's the big blockbusters that take up the bigger theater. So theaters themselves have to stand up for themselves. They can't sign a long-term contract with Disney, and there's going to be a battle going on to see who can stay in the theaters longer or less, because just 2 years ago they signed a deal where it's 17 days, like Wicked just came out, and 4 weeks later, you can rent it. It came out yesterday where you can rent Wicked now for $30, $20, whatever it is to rent it. Okay, so they have to adapt and change and stop doing this whole little dance with Disney where they control their whole aspect of the business. Travis says Disney puts out one good film a year, yet they can afford to lose an insane amount of money. No, they put a lot more money, more pictures out than you think of, Travis. They do at least 10 films, if not more, a year. Remember, the ratio is 10 movies, 3 will make money, 1 will be a blockbuster, and the 7 of them will be an absolute wash. One good one, yeah, but that's just it. The one good film makes up for the other 9 films that are not good. You see what I'm saying? The failed Star Wars movie that made a $1.2 billion and $2.1 billion or whatever the hell it was for each of those movies, it went down and down each one. That made up for the other 9 movies that came out in the theater that lost money or broke even or just barely made money. That's all you need is one good movie. It's a numbers game, just like anything else. If I went up to 10 different people and asked them out on a date, one of them only has to say yes to make me feel good, right? And if they all say, then it's a number game. Then you go to 11, then you go to 12, okay? That's all it is, right? And when you have as many films as they have and they put it out, okay, like let me see how many movies Disney put out this year. There are several Disney Pixar movies scheduled for release in 2024, including Moana, Mufasa, Inside Out 2, Snow White, but that got pushed back. Elio, Tron, Areas 2025. These all got pushed back. I need to see a list of... They came out with multiple movies in 2024, okay? Distributed, right, by Disney, okay? They came out with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 movies. 23 movies. Now let's go back to see which movies made money for them, okay, that we know of publicly, okay? We have Inside Out 2, which made a shit ton of money. We have Deadpool and Wolverine that made a shit ton of money. And we have Moana 2, which made good money, okay? Mufasa's out now. So 23 films, and I know that 3 of them made a shit ton of money, made their money back, made way more money, okay, that made up for all the other ones that they lost money, okay? I'm sure there's a couple other ones in here that made money, okay? But they released 23 films, right? And then next year coming up, okay, they have Captain America, they have Snow White, okay? They have Thunderbolts, they have Lilo and Stitch, they have the Fantastic Four, right? They own 20th Century Fox, remember that, okay? They have the Badlands coming out, Zootopia 2, Avengers Doomsday comes out 2026, right? They already have, that we know of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 movies coming out next year. One of those movies has to make money for them, and they cover their ass. And if you look at this, right? Look at this for a second. Captain America comes out in February. So it comes out in February. Let's say it has to stay in theaters 8 weeks. 8 weeks, and they sign a contract. The production company says in the theaters, you have to have your movie in the big screens, okay, the major theaters, for the first 3 weeks, okay? I would have to look at a chart on what they do, but here you have February, okay? Well, February 14th, 4 weeks later, you have Snow White. So get this now. You have to have, if you want Captain America, you have to take Snow White, okay? And if you take Snow White, you have to put Snow White in the same theater, in the big theaters. So February comes out, Captain America is in the big theaters. So let's say you own a megaplex, 20 theaters. Your 4 big theaters in the middle of the auditorium, okay, or the building, are now showing Brave New World for 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden, all the other movies that come out that week for the next 4 weeks, never in the big theaters. And then all of a sudden, the next big movie comes out, which is Snow White. Snow White comes out, and then now that takes the place. So now Brave New World moves into the smaller theaters, Snow White moves into the bigger theaters, and then rinse and repeat, right? The next one comes out. All right, well, that stays in the theaters for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Well, that gets you to the beginning of May, okay? Well, now Thunderbolts comes in. Well, now you take Thunderbolts, you put them in the big theater, and you move that. Do you see that? Do you see how it starts to fall, right? Do you see how it starts to fall? And this is recycled, just rinse and repeat, because Thunderbolts is here, and they don't think Thunderbolts is going to be that good. Hence why they're releasing Lilo and Stitch just a couple of weeks right after in May. May is a big time, summer blockbuster and whatnot, so they're going to do that, right? And then May, okay, well, we have a 1-2 combo. We have Thunderbolts and Lilo and Stitch, and then boom, we're bringing this in, right? You have the new Pixar movie coming in June, and then you have July coming in with Fantastic Four. Do you see how it works? This is a multi-billion-dollar business, and Walt Disney controls the theaters, right? And we had a conversation just a couple months ago, or it's probably over a year ago now, but we were talking about how there used to be a rule where theaters couldn't be owned by the distributor, okay? But now they can, right? Now they can. So now Disney can own theaters. Netflix owns theaters, right? All of these companies that made the stuff now own the properties that they actually go to. So now certain locations, obviously there's an AMC located on Disney property in Disney Springs. What movies do you think they show the most? They show all movies, but what do you think gets preferential treatment, right? So this is a big thing that obviously this is almost the same type of thing. Like, you probably don't give a shit as a customer. You just showing up to the theater and being like, I just want to watch a movie. Just like microtransactions and the chrono tokens and all this other shit. You're like, it's not a big deal, right? I'm just going to play the game and have fun. I'm just going to go to the movies and have fun. But behind the scenes, there's a huge thing going on where Disney's basically the mob, right? They're controlling the theaters based on what they're coming out with and putting in the theaters. And it's hurting the business because if their movies fail, then the theaters fail, right? They're linked together because they're being constrained. They have the theaters have a ball and chain locked to them, right? And the ball and chain is Disney. And if Disney succeeds, then they succeed. If Disney doesn't succeed, well, then they don't succeed because they're being pushed out. But these are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comment section down below.